welcome to another episode of The Critical Social Worker, a revolutionary storytelling podcast. I'm not sure what episode it is. I get lost, 70 something. But I'm very blessed to be joined all the way from Maryland by Miss Nicki Sanders. How are you today?
I am wonderful. Thank you for the invitation. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I feel honored that you joined me. We've connected on LinkedIn and we have a lot of mutual connections and things like that. But the thing that I love about you, Nikki, from the interactions that I've had is that you're so positive and uplifting. And I noticed that you also uplift other people. And I really love that about you, even with the little bit that I know about
Well, I appreciate that. I think that is part of social work one,
you.
but also I know that there were times that I needed it. So I want to be that person for other people as well.
Yeah. Well, how's the weather over in Maryland?
Windy.
Windy.
But outside of that, beautiful. We're in the 60s. That's not my weather. I would prefer 95, but I'll take 60 versus 20. So it's a
95 is
good fall
pretty
day.
95 is
Yeah,
pretty hot. We don't
it
even get
is.
that here. It's gets up to like 85 maybe. Um,
No, I'm good with 95, but I'll take
yeah.
90.
Yeah, that's cool though. I appreciate that. A lot of people, like I work in with students in Alaska, so a lot of them like the cold. They appreciate the cold weather, but I've always been a warm weather. I like to be
Yeah,
outside and being able to enjoy
absolutely.
myself. I've only been to Baltimore once. Watched The Wire several times and things like that, but I've only
I've
been to
never seen
Baltimore.
The Wire.
Oh, you never have?
I've never watched it.
I think it's the best
Yep.
show ever made. But I went to Baltimore. My wife had a presentation or something or a training that she went to, and we were just downtown and walking around and took a few taxis and that. And I thought that the people in Baltimore were really nice. Like
Absolutely.
they were really kind to us and like thoughtful and curious about who we were. And I, never got any real bad vibes or anything like that. And there was some stuff going on
No,
here and there, but like, everybody was just nice to
it
us.
goes on
So,
everywhere. Yep.
mhm,
It's the stuff that goes on everywhere.
yeah.
Um, so open arms, right? When we get with the right people, it's open arms. I have not had any challenges in Baltimore.
Yeah. Have you always been over there in that area?
I was born in Washington, D.C., so I spent over half of my life in that city before moving a little bit further north. So I am definitely a DC girl.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I've been to DC a couple times just for work. No, I didn't. I only walked around a little bit in like the tourist areas, but DC is. But it's funny how close DC is to Baltimore. But I got way different vibes from
Oh,
both
very
different
different vibes.
places. You know what I
Oh,
mean?
very different cities.
Yeah.
Very different cities. When I say, "Oh, I'm going to the city," most people think I'm talking about Baltimore. I'm like, "No, I'm talking about DC." I'm like, back to the city. So very different place, but growing up in the city, not in the touristy areas, not in downtown, just really being in the city was very different. Double Dutch, hide and go seek, all the things. So I had a good childhood in the city. I prefer the country now, but but it
Me
was
too.
okay. Good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just a real quick story. I went to DC. This had to be like 15 years ago or something for like a suicide training, and
Okay.
I don't even remember who it was, but my dad. I was talking to my dad, and he's like, "This, he's into like country music," and he's like, "You got to
Hmm.
go see this guy." And so I took a taxi to wherever the venue was. I don't remember, not that far away from everything, and it was canceled because the guy was sick. And so I was like, oh, I'll just walk back. It wasn't that far, and it started to feel a little bit like I was in, maybe a neighborhood that wouldn't be friendly to me. And I wasn't sure,
Hmm.
but because you hear stories about DC all the time,
Of course.
and
Of course.
walking around, and I was like, oh, I don't know, am I in the, I don't know if I'm in the right place. And so the guy came over and talked to me, and he's like, you from around here? And I was like, oh, I'm just, walking back to my hotel. And he's like, well, you should be a little cautious. And he's, my name's DC. And I was like, hell, people call me DC from DC. And he's,
Okay.
how about I walk you back? And he was really friendly and he
Look at
walked me
that.
back. And I bought him dinner and he told me all about his life and about some of the history of like the redistricting or whatever you call it, maybe the gentrification of the area and how his family used to
Gentrification.
be in that. I
Yes.
can't remember what it's called, like G Street or something, with all
Yep.
is it G Street with all the shops and stuff? And he said that his family
All the
used to
shop.
live there and they
More
moved
like,
him out.
yep. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It is not the same city that I grew up in by any stretch of the imagination. It is at one point it was the most gentrified city in the country. I don't know where it is right now. Um, but that was one of the statistics that I would talk with my students about because one of the schools I teach in is still in DC and the other is in Maryland. So it's a very different city, very gentrified, very, do you live in a district or do you live in DC? Because they're kind of two different places.
Yeah.
So, but I'm glad that you found the support and resource that you needed that
Yeah.
day and got some good company and conversation from it.
Yeah, he took care of me for sure. And I often think that
Absolutely.
those kind of interactions are not coincidental. Sometimes you need a
No,
friend, and they show up right when you need them to.
absolutely.
I truly believe that.
Indeed.
Yeah. Well, I have a
Yeah.
just a opening question kind of for you. Is that I interviewed a friend of mine who lives in Virginia, so not too far away from you in Richmond,
Hmm.
and he's a black revolutionary, and we were talking about social work there, and I was asking him about what black folks, black community in Virginia and Richmond feel about social workers, and he just kind of put his head down and shook his head, and he's like, I have to be honest with you. A lot of times most of the time we're going to look at social workers as the system or the opposition as somebody that's not there to help us. And when you think about it, that's pretty sad. That I mean,
Hmm.
the social work, what it's supposed to be, and people would feel that way, and I can totally understand why they would, given the circumstances. You know what I mean? Is
Yep.
is it similar sentiment up a little bit further north where you're at?
I think I think it is. I think that I I also think it's different for women and men for different reasons. But for me, what I generally hear is people think I'm a saint, right? Like, oh my God, I couldn't do what you do. I'm like, but you don't actually know what I do. Um, or they're like, have you ever taken people's children? No, ma'am, I have not. So it's two, those are the two, things that people normally know, which is why I talk a lot about all of the opportunities that are available in social work because people's view of social work is so very limited.
Mhm.
We're coming in and someone's most vulnerable time and helping them, or we're coming in someone's most vulnerable time and in some people's opinions making things a little bit worse. um, so it is definitely our job to, I think, continue to talk about all the diversity that is available in social work and to eliminate the stigma and the stereotypes because I do think that it is doing more harm than good. And we are deterring good people, but also we don't have the support and resources in the communities that oftentimes need us the most, um, for those exact reasons because they've had bad experiences, because a neighbor had a bad experience. So their concerns are valid, right? Let's be
Mhm.
truthful. Um, but I think it's up to us to change that narrative, and I'm excited that I'm seeing the shift happening.
Yeah, well, we were talking just a little bit earlier about you being a trailblazer and forging your own path. And I feel very similar to that myself. And I was telling you earlier, when I talk to a lot of my students, they get excited about that because I think that many of
Hmm.
them are also disturbed by the limitation. I think
Yes.
Patrick Taylor, that I talked to a couple months ago, would say that's the micro
Hmm.
pipeline in social work.
Yep.
Either going to be case manager or or going into clinical therapy, and that's good. That's good and necessary and important work. My wife's a
Absolutely.
therapist, but some of us have different ideas, and we see social work in a different way. But it's right; it's limited from the first when we step into history. We start at Jane Addams,
Yep.
but there's more to social work history
Absolutely.
than Jane Addams, if that makes sense. It starts long ago, and
There is.
yeah. So what?
And I think, and sorry, go ahead and finish. And
No, no, go
I
ahead.
had a thought.
Go
I was gonna
ahead.
say because I might forget it. So,
Yeah, go ahead.
but I think that even in talking about Jane Addams and what I'm teaching intro to social work right now. And so we're talking also about like Dorothy Height, right? Like there were also people of color who were also doing this work,
Hmm.
before it was a formal profession and while it was being formalized. Um, but also the thing that I say to my students, right? Here are kind of the top three or four. You're going to be a therapist. You're going into child welfare. They know school social workers, right? Because they have school social
Hmm.
workers. or they have hospital social workers. And so I'm like, well, those kind of the big four, and I'm none of those things, right?
Hmm.
And I've never been any of those things. Um, and I don't know if you saw the post not too long ago. I had a retired nurse tell me that the work that I do isn't real social work, and I was like, okay. Um, I've heard that from social workers, right? It was the first time I heard that from someone outside of the profession. And Patrick is great. I love what he talks about in terms of that pipeline, because I was also pushed into that pipeline, even though I knew 100% for sure I never wanted to do any of those things. Um, and so I decided to go into social work in my senior year of high school because I wanted to support teen moms in foster care. So that meant program development, program management, housing, all of those things. I actually ended up transferring and getting my bachelor's degree in sociology after going all the way through. That's a whole nother story. But I was a transfer student, right? So my bachelor's degree is in sociology, but I had gone, actually, let's tell that story. Let's tell that story because it is relevant. So I had gone all the way up through my, junior year. And the only thing I needed to do was, part two of the things and my placement for my senior year. And I couldn't figure out how I was going to do that and be a parent and go to work, because how am I going to get all these hours in and still feed my child and still, right? And so it started very, very early, and I just couldn't figure it out. And that wasn't the main reason that I transferred, but it was definitely part of the reason. The other part of the reason is because as a first generation college student, I was not aware of how the accreditation process works, and that it's a process, right? So when I heard, we're going through this accreditation, I thought the school was going to lose its accreditation and my degree wasn't going to mean anything. So it was the fear and misunderstanding and not knowing as a first generation college student that I would have been totally fine staying there, but I also had no idea how I was even going to graduate. And so I ended up transferring and, graduating 2 years later. But when I went to grad school to get my MSW, I was in the same predicament, right? How do I do this, all of these hours, luckily or not? I went to the University of Maryland, Baltimore School of Social Work, and they had the option for an extended placement. So instead of finishing in May, I finished in January because I did less hours each week. And I was lucky enough to have a job with an employer that was large enough that I could do my field placement as an employee based field placement. And so what that meant was my supervisor for my job could not be my field supervisor. I was so lucky that I had two people who were willing to be my field supervisor. Um, but had my job not said, yes, we're going to pay you 40 hours because you're doing 40 hours of work, even though you're doing it in these two places, I don't know how I would have actually gotten my MSW. And my first placement was a clinical placement because that was the person who was willing to supervise me. And so that was my only option. I have to do this clinical placement because this is the person who's willing to supervise me at my place of employment. And without it, I can't graduate. And I hated the entire year. I didn't hate it. I just didn't like it. And I knew I wouldn't like it. And I disliked it more at the end. And I was more sure that I was on the right path in the beginning versus that little detour for that year. So I have definitely been pushed down the pipeline. Uh, and everybody said you need to get your license or you have to do this clinical placement, and I'm like, I'm just not. So here in the state of Maryland, I am not. I can say I have a social work degree, but this is a state with title protection. So if you don't have a license, and I call it gatekeeping, they call it title protection. That's a different story. But again, I was pushed down that path because that was the only option available for me. And then my advanced placement, I created myself. Right? I was like, would you supervise me? I'll do all the work. I'll create all the assignments, all of the things, and I created it. And then they just had to monitor and supervise everything. But essentially, I created it myself because that's what I went to school for. So, yeah.
Yeah. And for those of you that are listening in that going through your education or thinking about, your MSW or whatever, it's one of the biggest, I don't know, pieces of advice, but encouragement that I give is
Hmm.
that you can do something different. It may seem like you can't, and everybody else may be blind to it, but you can. I've
Yep.
done it. Nikki's done it. I've talked to a lot
Yep.
of different folks, and the only way for us to change social work is for us to do things different and to continue to talk about those things. So much respect to you, Nikki. And when I
Thank
was
you.
at my MSW at University of Hawaii at Manoa, I went there with these grand ideas that grad
Hmm.
school was going to teach me new things, that
Right.
because the world's always changing and things like that. And what I felt going through that, now don't get me wrong, there were plenty of good experiences, positive experiences.
Hmm.
I had some professors that were really good and really thoughtful. I had an indigenous professor that helped push me forward in a lot of the ways. I had a class from Angela Davis while I was there.
Wow.
So it was
Okay.
very, I wasn't in the social work department, but it was a very good experience.
Right.
But I remember at the end, I was in the behavioral mental health cohort. And I remember at the end, we had to stand up and say that what we had learned, maybe the biggest thing that we had learned through
Hmm.
social work or through our master's degree. And everyone gave these really profound answers, about the meaningful experiences. And I was like, I'm sorry about this, but I have to tell the truth. The biggest thing that I learned was that I don't want to be a social worker anymore. And it was because I felt like the education, for the most part, was limited in the ways that you talked about earlier. And
Hmm.
that wasn't how I saw myself. I saw myself building something different and working on a different kind of scale. I'm not somebody who can sit there and talk to 8 people for 1 hour per day. I'm not. I won't even hear them by the end of the day, if that
Right.
makes sense. And so
Yes.
I told him that I remember my professor was so upset. She just gave me the dirtiest look, but it's like, I have to be honest about it. And then social work just keeps pulling me back in, if you know what I mean. Social work kind of chosen me. And so I've accepted that at this point.
I say that all the time. I really am running away. I don't know how I'm getting back in the same direction, but I really have run away quite a few times. It is a pull to kind of come back, but I think there is a need, right? So yes, we're being pulled back in, but I think we need to be pulled back in, or else nothing changes, right? We have to be the
Mhm.
voices. I did a presentation for students at Columbia University. They started a macro social work club. I'm like, yes, great, absolutely, kudos to you all. And I did the presentation, and this young lady at the end was crying, and I was like, like, what's happening? And she's like, I didn't know. Basically, what she said was, "You're the only person that told me that the things that I was thinking were possible." And she was so overwhelmed because she had been getting so much opposition in her MSW program because of the macro focus that she wanted to. She was in a macro placement, but what she wanted to do, and she was still, even in that macro program, being pushed into this more traditional social work space. And students should never be that overwhelmed, should never be that burdened down. You're paying for your education. You're supposed to be learning and growing and experimenting and being innovative. And it's not happening. It's on a grand scale, it's not happening. I won't say it's not happening at all, but it's not happening often enough, and it's not happening in as many places as it should. Is I think there are people who are fighting very hard to keep things the same.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's so much I want to talk about and unpack in what you just said. And David, I
Yeah.
see your question. I think it will fit in just a minute if you give me a minute. But let's just broaden it a little bit with, like, so in social work, right? To get your BSW or your MSW, you have to, for both, you have to do a practicum internship,
Yep.
like 15 to 25 hours, depending on what you've got
Mm-hmm.
going on per week. Most of the time, it's unpaid. You told your story about paid placement. Me personally, when I was going through my undergrad, I got I had to quit my job where I was pretty elevated to go and take a unpaid internship role. They wouldn't let me do it at my place of employment, and so I quit, moved to the university area, went they and they placed me with working with domestic violence offenders, which actually, I kind of enjoyed that job. It was meaningful because there was so much trauma and stuff to unpack,
Okay.
and I enjoyed it. But after, so they told me I couldn't get a paid practicum, and it's changed a little bit now. But so they
Just
told
a
me I
little.
couldn't. So I go to this practicum, and I got a lot of really good experience, but I didn't get any supervision, like none. Nobody ever sat with me for
Mhm.
supervision. Um, and the director who ran it said, "Christian, you're really, really good at what you do. Do you think that they will let you work over here some extra hours and will pay you?" And I'm thinking, no, probably. I don't think so. They already told me
Right?
no. And she said, "Well, I'm going to reach out to them." And she reached out, and they said, the field director was kind about it and said, "Yeah, you can do that." And I needed the money, so it was positive. But
Of
then it makes me
course.
think, well, why couldn't I have just done it in the first place? And I
Yes.
think one of the points I want to bring up is that the practicum internship is kind of set up like it's only for the traditional type of students that are
Yes.
22 years old and haven't had a
Yes.
job, and they need to go in there and get some work experience. But I don't know the percentage, but a large percentage of the students that I've worked with at 3 different universities in social work have been older, non-traditional students, had
Yes.
military experience, family experience, previous
Yep.
social work experience, and they, to it, it's a big hit to have to go and take a unpaid internship and then to sometimes be treated like a 22-year-old intern, telling you to take out the trash and make the coffee and stuff like that, if you know what I mean. And so
I
it's
do.
very, very flawed.
Absolutely. Yes. And I did. My bachelor's degree is actually in sociology. So not only as social workers are we required to do these internships, but the hours were double what I was required to do as a sociology major. So I did still end up quitting my job, but it was only for the end of the semester, and then I graduated and I figured it out. Versus having to do that for 2 semesters um, and so it's like, am I going to be a mother? Am I going to be a student? What am I going to do? Having to double those hours just would not have been feasible, even in that one semester. Um, but the other piece of that is we talk a lot about unpaid internships and this idea of maybe grooming is not the best word, but it's the word I'm going to use, right? Students to accept low wages and being underpaid and kind of normalizing that. But it's a little bit more than just not being paid to do the work that you're doing. It's also paying to do free work because you
Yes.
paid your tuition. I'm like, no, no, I am paying to work for free. And when you think of it that way, it's absolutely even more ridiculous that there aren't options for students, um, especially in small nonprofits. I get it, right? So if we can do something as simple as offering a transportation stipend or something along those
Mhm.
lines to help offset some costs for students, I think we should do that when that is possible if we can't do a living wage. But the other piece of that is that interns are not free labor, right? These are um, emerging professionals. And like you said, I work with a lot of non traditional students, and I was a very non traditional student by the time I went to um, grad school and by the time I transferred, actually. Um, and we don't respect that this is or should be mutually beneficial. They
Yeah.
are contributing, but their responsibilities and role, right? You signed all the papers that you were going to do all the things that the university wants you to do, and it doesn't always happen. And so, what I've said to my students, I've been supervising interns since 2013, right? So, every position I've been in, whether it's a full time or part time position, I have been very intentional about making sure that I'm bringing in interns so they do have a valuable learning experience. Um, but also with the students in my classes, even though I'm not their advisor, right? So I'm still advising them on the same thing. And right now, I'm also the internship coordinator for a public health department in a community college. And so, even with those students, I'm saying, here's what you need to do going in. Here are the expectations, and empowering them to speak up in ways that um, their needs are being met, to reach out for support when it's something they can't solve themselves. But the one thing that I always have all of my interns do, no matter if they're undergrad or grad, is make them responsible for creating a project. So my question is always, what do you want to do when you leave here? Why are you in school? Why are you getting this degree? What's the plan? And then they have to come up with a project so that when they graduate, they have experience that they can put on their resume in doing that thing that they want to do. That should be the norm because the organization is still getting work done. I'm not telling them to do things that aren't beneficial to the organization. We make it work. So it should be reciprocal and mutually beneficial, not taking out trash and getting coffee, because that would make me really angry if I found out one of my interns were doing that. Um, so it is about reciprocity and contributing to the next generation of social workers and leaders. And so I am very passionate about making sure that students get a valuable, meaningful, impactful internship experience, because you can't complain about students not knowing things and not wanting to work when you haven't trained them. So I'm like, don't complain, train them.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so important, and it's I think something that is remarkable to me is how much a senior student's experience depends upon the who they get as a supervisor.
Absolutely.
So in undergrad, my supervisor, I wouldn't say she was bad. She just didn't give me supervision, but she was
Hmm.
good at what she did, and she wasn't mean or anything like that. Didn't make me
Right.
take out the trash. But then when I was at my MSW, I was placed at this, I don't know, like a mental health place in the hospital.
Hmm.
And so I went in there, and the very first day they put me in like a intake clinical meeting, whatever you want to call it, and they're talking about some of the new clients that are coming in. And the director of the program, my supervisor, asks his interns, "So how crazy is this one?" And I'm thinking, like, this is how you talk about the clients with a new intern the
Right.
very first day. And then later, the guy gave me the whole thing about how I'm the new intern and it's my job to make the coffee. And I don't have a problem making coffee
Hmm.
for somebody or helping out, but like, I do have a problem being a 30-something-year-old man with life
Absolutely.
experience and you talk to me like that, if that makes
Yes.
sense. And so there were all kinds of like super red flags. If my
Yes.
students told me that stuff, I'd get on it right away. But when
Absolutely.
I went and talked to our field director, it seemed that the burden was not that this guy shouldn't be supervising interns over there, but with that it was going to cause her more work and to
Mm.
change the internship. And I feel
Okay.
that way over the years. And in some ways, I empathize because a lot of field directors are so overworked. And so
Right.
it is a lot for them, but that's not the student's fault. And like
No.
you said earlier, if it's not a reciprocal, mutually beneficial, meaningful
Hmm.
experience that a student is paying for, and even more than paying for, going into debt for, often taking a
Yes.
loan out to pay back
Yes.
tomorrow, um, that's messed up. No matter how you look at it, you put that on
Absolutely.
paper, you do the math, that's messed up.
Absolutely. And I'm active on LinkedIn. It's where we connected, and a little less on Facebook. But at one point, I was active on Facebook as well. And so the numbers of students who reach out to me to help them find internships or to process what's happening in their internship, um, is disheartening, which is why I am shifting myself back to um, going into this space of making sure that I am offering my support resources to organizations and even private practice therapists to develop internship programs. That is where I feel like I'm being pulled right now, is making sure that organizations are developing the kinds of programs that we're talking about that are mutually beneficial and students graduate with experience and opportunities and a great resume and a referral and all of those things. Um, and so I've had students, like, oh, I was doing therapy with 10 clients as an undergrad by yourself. Like, what are you talking about? Or another, not even a client, who um, was in a nursing home, and because she wasn't getting the kind of supervision she needed, she was actually helping residents go to the bathroom and changing beds, and I was like, no, no, no. Um, so yeah, I'm passionate about it. from my own experience, but also because I want other students to ensure that they graduate. And I applied for one job after I got my MSW, and that one job was the job that I got, and it was very tailored to exactly the thing that I wanted to do, and I was very intentional about that. And that, job market has changed, of course, but let's make sure students have what they need because they're paying for it and they deserve it.
Yeah. And just the way we have it set up is just not really feasible or
No,
conducive for them to be able to do that.
nope.
I have a So I had a student that asked me to keep her anonymous. She didn't want to say
Okay.
her name, but she said that she had a placement and she was promised for it to be paid, and then when it got down to it, they didn't. I don't know the whole story behind it, but
Mm-hmm.
it started making her a little bit disillusioned towards the whole practicum experience, among other things. And she says she looks at it and she thinks it goes against social work ethics to make
Right.
some of these students go to unpaid internships,
Mm-hmm.
and that she just can't fathom how somebody could like that didn't have any money, that didn't have many resources or had to work a
Right.
full-time job at the same time. She couldn't fathom how they would be able to go through that. And then um, David in the chat also like doubles down on that pretty much and wants to know if you have suggestions for someone that does have to work full time and raise a family, and do the practicum as far as balancing everything at once. And he says
Right.
he's nervous about doing it. You know, he lives in a remote area, rural area, and being at work and having to take care of your family. He's worried about that.
Yeah.
And one more thing that I hear from students that really troubles me, is that their senior year and other years, but especially that senior year, is that they
Mm-hmm.
feel so overwhelmed that sometimes it feels like busy work that takes them away from both their
Yes.
practicum experience, makes them lose sleep, time away from their family, and things like that. And from my perspective, sometimes less is more, and the more we can support the experience that they're going through
Mm-hmm.
versus adding
Yes.
to it, if that makes sense, then we're able to get to a realm where the student feels supported. We have the time, they have the time to reflect and think and make changes. And then we also have the time and the ability to help them make those changes when it becomes
Mm-hmm.
necessary.
Absolutely. I first of all, I'm always going to be a proponent of self care. Been there, done that. The whole burnout thing, right? Like that should not be the norm, even though it is, right? That should not be the norm. And I get it. I think that being in an urban area, clearly I have more options and opportunities, and my students have more options and opportunities. And some of the things that I have talked to students about is going into places that have a kind of 24-hour, right? Can you go into a group home? Can you go into a shelter? Can you go into a prison, right? What are the things that are open evenings and weekends when you may have to do those internship hours? One of the things that helped me was also being able to create things that worked for my life and my lifestyle. So, if I wanted to put on a career fair, right, or a job fair, or a community event, make it something that also my family could come to. So I could also, have them there and at least they got to see me at work, right? That kind of thing. I think another part of that is being honest about what is absolutely possible and letting your support system, pray you have a support system, know that things are going to change, but it's temporary. I, with all of my interns, I'm like, tell me what classes you're taking. Let's see if some of the assignments that you do here can also work for the classes that you're taking. So you're not doing an assignment for class on advocacy and then you're coming here and trying to do a different project. Let's just make this advocacy thing a project that works for both things. I think that when we start to kind of go deeper instead of going wider, that we give students more opportunities. So I encourage my students to, in places that it makes sense, right? Use the same topic. So for me, I was completely into working with teen parents, so teen pregnancy prevention and then teen parenthood. So my joke to my students is, by the time I got my undergraduate degree, it was like I had a master's degree, a minor in like teen parenting and pregnancy prevention, because every assignment that made sense for me to do that thing, I put that in there. So that was my interest, but also I was going deeper. So when I graduated, that was exactly the job that I went into, because I was very intentional about that. Now I understand that my experience is different. Again, I'm in an urban area, so I had a lot more options. Um, but also, I was very intentional about going into um, the kinds of spaces that I wanted to be in. So I'm like stalking, the few places that were working with, teen moms in foster care, and saying, here's the project that I took on, and here's the thing that I've done in my internship, so that I was able to show that I had some experience and transferable skills. And so for those students who, and when I couldn't do that, I did volunteer sometimes, right? So here and there, trying to get connections and that kind of thing. But I think the idea that we are going to perform 100% at everything is a falsehood, and we do ourselves a disservice. And so I would say, sit down with your support system and plan out what times, right? Don't take classes at, 7 a.m. if you know that that's not going to be feasible, right? And so I work with my students to choose classes at times that are going to give them the best um, opportunity to have some balance, and to look for placements that are going to give them the best opportunity to do the kind of work that they want to do after they graduate. Or if we have to just get it done, right? Let's try to find something that has night or weekend hours, so that we just get it done, because that's also reality. Sometimes you
Mhm.
just have to get it done.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what many of us did. You just
Yeah,
got to get
that's
it done. You
it.
don't really have an explanation. The numbers often
Nope.
don't work when you do like the math
Yep.
for, like I said,
Nope.
for internship, grad school. You're supposed to be in
Yep.
like 7, 8 hours a week on class. Well, you do all the math,
Yep.
and it doesn't really work out.
Nope.
So,
I was grateful that they let me extend that time to June, until actually
mhm,
July. So I didn't have to complete all my hours by April. I was able to extend that time to July. So I worked less hours during the week, which allowed me to again keep my full-time job and do that. But that's not the norm. And if I had worked
mhm,
in a different organization, I honestly don't know how I would have graduated. Like I just I don't know how I would have graduated.
yeah. When, even since we've been through our degrees, life has become
Mhm.
hard. I mean, life's always hard for
Indeed.
folks, but life is hard right now. Folks are
Mhm.
challenged. They're disconnected, all kinds of things, right? And
Indeed.
I feel like sometimes social work. I mean, it's hard to speak all of social work, but I feel like in general, we kind of ignore it. We kind of ignore the struggles that a student might be going through today, and we
Mhm.
look at it. Well, you got to do what you got to do, and you got to
Right.
whatever you want to say. Why do you think we don't, as social work, not like there's a lot of diversity within social work, but as a
Right.
whole, as a profession, why do you think so often it feels like we lack empathy for the very students that we're preparing to show empathy out in the world?
Yeah. I mean, I've definitely seen that in the classroom, in multiple classrooms, and I've seen that in social workers when, they're going into their first role, right? And having a supervisor who is a social worker, who is not empathetic, who is not understanding. And I think some of it is, I hope some of it is this, I call it indoctrination, right? Around self sacrifice, and not putting yourself and your needs first, right? And yes, we're here. We're going to take care of other people. We want to be a support and a resource, but we also need to do that for our students and for ourselves. And so I think that some of that really is, some of it is generational, right? Like, well, I did this, and my generation, right? And this idea, which is ridiculous, also, that younger generations are weak and that they're entitled and all of those things. And I'm like, well, why would I want somebody to struggle and suffer like I did? That makes no sense to
Mhm,
me. Um, but also this idea that we are teaching students to struggle and suffer so that when they go into the workplace, they have normalized struggle and suffering. Um, and it's a very hard thing, even with leadership. I always say to leaders, like, you have to treat your staff the way you want your staff to treat their clients. Like, I'm confused why the clients get empathy and the staff don't. So I think some of it is generational, but I think some of it is also this underlying belief that social workers should self-sacrifice, that social workers should put everybody and everything before their needs, and they are in some ways training students to go, and you hear that, well, when you get to work, you're not going to be able to take off. Well, if I fall and break my ankle, I will get to take off at work, right? I may not get paid, but I get to take off. um, so I think that that is, it's a problem. I also think, and no disrespect to any professors, I think some of it is when you have been in a space so long, you kind of get desensitized to it. I think I have the privilege of being an adjunct. So I am in my classroom, I'm in the workplace, I'm over here. And so I get to see life from different vantage points and see all of the ways that people are suffering and struggling outside of academia. And we know that those things impact students, right? So if I'm worried about how I'm going to pay my rent, I'm really not going to do your assignment, right? That's just not a logical request. So I think some of it also is we've been in these spaces so long that we just get desensitized to it, unfortunately, just like, can happen in any other workplace.
Yeah, you said that so beautifully. I've thought about that and you articulated it in a way that I haven't been
Okay.
able to. But it is that it's that
Yeah.
you become kind of desensitized
Hmm.
and if you've been away from it for so long and
Right.
times are changing and whatnot
Hmm.
that you're not able to keep up with what is really needed right now and to
Right.
empathize with what's going on.
Yeah.
Um, like I said, I'm often shocked at the lack of empathy
I
that's
am
put
too.
forth towards students. And
And shocked and angered sometimes, right? They kind of go together every now and again,
mhm.
because it's it's angering, but it's also disheartening, right? And I've had students, I'm on campus once or twice a week. I've had students tell me, the most private and traumatic events. And I'm like, did you tell anybody else on campus? And they're like, no. And I'm like, oh, okay. So now we have to, go through the resources and support and the other professors. But I think I show up in as a resource, right? I'm not talking at you. We are learning together, right? And I want to be sure that you can pass this class. And so if there are things that are preventing you from doing your best here, let's kind of talk about it and see if we can get those things taken care of. Can I always help? No, but sometimes help just sounds like a listening ear.
Yeah. Do you have any thoughts or advice for, say, a student that's in a bad practicum situation that they're not getting what they need and how they can advocate for themselves?
Absolutely. Advocate for yourself. That's the first
Mhm.
thing, right? I think that oftentimes students don't think that they have other options or that they can speak up and advocate for themselves. So I think having a plan for advocacy is important. Knowing the person, and I'm not saying knowing intimately, I'm saying having an idea of how the person is going to react. Are they going to be punitive? Are they going to say, well, maybe you shouldn't be here? Or are they going to be, kind of open to it? I send all of my students, well, first of all, I tell them to document everything. Let's start there, right? So
Mm.
document everything. I'm like, social work 101, document everything. The second thing is I talk to them about what do they really like. Do they know what they really want to happen? Like what's happening that shouldn't be happening, and what is the thing that should be happening, or what is the outcome that you want, so that when you go to, whether it's your field supervisor or whether you're going to your supervisor, or maybe it's a colleague and not your actual field supervisor, that you're also going in with some solutions. It doesn't have to be, I figured it all out, but oftentimes people are more open to hearing what you have to say when they know that you have kind of thought through, this isn't working and this is the thing over here that could work. Um, I definitely suggest my students go to their field supervisor first, right? Here are the things that they said they would do. Here's what's happening. Here's what's not working. And whether that means that the field supervisor reaches out to them directly, whether that means that they are instructed on how to advocate for themselves. I think for my students, what I generally do is tell them to come back to me, and then we will walk through how to advocate for themselves, come up with the strategy, the plan. And then if that doesn't work, and then I say, okay, so here's part two or phase two. Or I often say, when you send that out, make sure you copy me on it, right? So we are all on the same page and nobody knows. And sometimes you just have to go a little bit further, um, above that person, because again, they signed a contract and said, here's the thing that they will offer and provide to you. And if it's a personality thing, maybe you can work with a different person, not with that same supervisor. um, I've had interns have a task supervisor and then have a field, supervisor, so maybe you can work with a different person. But I think documentation, one, having someone that you can problem solve and talk to, and then having an idea of possible solutions, so that we know that it doesn't always turn out the way that we want it to. Um, and what are the consequences that we're willing to accept? Because sometimes the consequences are not worth the hassle and we just need to go.
Yeah. And I would add to that, be assertive,
Mm-hmm.
and like add up to the assertiveness, because I think
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes when you're an intern, you feel very powerless, and so
Yes.
that you project that affect when you talk about it,
Mm-hmm.
because you say things like, I guess I'd be willing to stay here if this whatever, instead of saying, like, this is
Yes.
not working for me right now.
Right.
I've gave it some time. I've thought about it. I've critically
Mhm.
reflected on it. I'm requesting a change, if that makes
Yep.
sense. Be assertive
And that,
about it.
yes, when it's time to go, it is time to go, right? Sometimes it's just not worth it and you just need to change your placement, and don't feel like that is a failure, because you're advocating for yourself, one, but two, again, oftentimes the environment was never set up for your success in the beginning.
Hmm. Yeah, very well said. It's hard to succeed if it's not set up for you to do
Absolutely.
so in the right way.
Absolutely.
Well, we've talked a little bit about blazing our path, our own paths, our personal paths
Hmm.
as social workers. But one of the things that I've been inspired by, doing this podcast, talking to you, Patrick Taylor, many other folks,
Right.
is that there are so many of us that are blazing our own paths. And it
Yes.
seems like we are also in, you may say that the universe is aligned right now for social workers like us
Indeed.
to unite together and blaze a different path in a
Yeah.
larger scale together. You have any thoughts on that or any vision?
Do I have a vision? I'm gonna come back to the vision because I'm not sure that I've actually thought that all the way through. But I am excited to see the change happening,
Mhm.
and to see more people speaking up and saying, "Here's all the amazing things that I have done." Because it gives students and new social workers a different vision, right? Like,
Mhm.
here's what I can do. Here are these things. And one of the things that I've said is I've made it my personal mission to kind of eliminate that outdated narrow view of social work. This is my mission right
Mhm.
now in life. So I'm excited about seeing so many social workers say, I have these transferable skills and I'm using them in all of these ways. I personally don't think that you ever have to leave social work. You just social work differently, right?
Mhm.
I'm using my education, I'm using my expertise, I'm using my experience in a new space, in a new way, but still from my social work framework. So I don't think that there is ever a I left social work. Um, I think that we are in a space where social work has to change if the profession is going to continue to thrive. So yes, the um, totally just drew a blank. The book that tells you about the growth of, of the profession. Can't even think of the name right now. Um, but they're projecting that social work will continue to grow over however many years, right? Um, but grow how? Right? Are we just going to grow and repeat the same cycle of social workers get burned out and they leave and then we replace them with new ones and we keep this cycle? Or are we all going to say, no, here are the other things that we can do? And I feel like right now, this is the time people are saying, here are the other things that we can do because our skills are transferable skills. At the end of the day, your social work skills are human behavior, people skills. We know, understand people. And everything that we do is about people. And that when I say we, I mean every business, right? Your clients are people. It doesn't matter whether you're in corporate social work or whether you're in library social work. You are still supporting people. So I am excited that I am hearing more voices, more podcasts, more voices, more students who are saying, I don't really want to do therapy. I want to do this other thing over here. And how can I get it done? And speaking up and asking those questions. I think it had to have been 2022. It was 2022 or 2023. I don't remember which one. But I went to the Millennial Social Work Conference and I was like, yes, social work is in good hands, right? As a Gen Xer, I'm like, I feel like I'm auntie now. And it's in the hands of these millennials who are like, we're not doing that anymore. This we're done. And this is the what we're going to do right now. So um, I'm seeing more publications, from social workers or compilations of, 100 things that you can do with your social work degree, those kinds of things. So I love that that is happening. I think that that is what needs to happen in order for social work to actually thrive, not just survive, because we're losing good people and we're losing people before they even come in because they're being deterred by social workers who have been burned out from coming into the profession. So I think this is the perfect time to spread your wings. The support and the resources are available. There are groups, there's books, there's podcasts. Um, this is a great time to actually make your vision excuse me, your reality. I think what I would love to see in terms of vision is social workers actually continuing to tear down the walls that have divided the profession internally. So we talk a lot about, you know, in social work 100, intro to social work 200, we're talking about meso, macro, and micro. But somewhere along the path of graduation, we forget all about it and we're going straight to therapy or micro social work. And I'm like, well, what about these other two areas?
Mhm.
And so I continue to remind my students meso, macro, and micro, and there's work to be done in each of those spaces. And holistically, we all should be working together because everything that we do impacts our clients, no matter how we're working with them. So I think my vision would be for us to continue to network and support each other and speak up and be visible and not hide in the back anymore. I think a few years ago, the people who were moving out of traditional social work weren't telling people that they were social workers or weren't using, their credentials. And now we're seeing people saying, no, hire me because I am a social worker and I can do this job because I am a social worker, not in spite of being a social worker.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a beautiful thing to be able to say something like that with some power, gives you some power. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, just to add to that vision a little bit, been thinking about it for a while, and I've been have so many connections now all over,
Hmm.
really all over the world, and so many people. We've mentioned a lot of them are doing great things in different ways. Like I said, Patrick Taylor's got that micro pipeline thing. You got
Absolutely.
um, brother KD's doing the liberation social work thing. There's too many for me to name, but I
Right.
think something that I see is us all uniting some way in,
Mm-hmm.
like, so, liberation social work, revolutionary social work, they're both good, but they also
Yes,
overlap quite a bit, and that we could work together
indeed.
and have more power collectively, if that makes sense. And so, an idea that
It does.
my wife is a clinical therapist too, and well, we've been talking about it, and we've been really thinking about holding this, whatever we call a revolutionary social work summit or something, and just making it
Mm-hmm.
invite only.
Right.
And maybe other people can invite folks as well, but then gathering and using it as a launching board to, you know making something different. So I think one of the flaws of social work is that, not saying that the NASW is all bad or anything like that, but it's only one
No.
organization,
Right.
and it's so centralized, and it's different than the way I differ from I deviate from a lot of the ways they look at things and the way they do
Yes.
things. Not everything, but some things. And it'd be great if we had another opportunity for folks to join. So it wasn't just the
Mm-hmm.
NASW that's defining everything and, creating the the measuring sticks and the what we're allowed to do and what we can do and what we should be doing. There's I think one of the things that we fail at in social work. I think one of the things that, for example, the NASW does really good regarding diversity. When I went to the NASW national conference, you see a lot
Mm-hmm.
of black brothers and sisters all over the place, and so it's very diverse in that regard. People in leadership, people speaking, very positive. But then it loses it in when it comes to diversity sometimes, as far as like diversity of thought or diversity of
Mm-hmm.
different experience and things like that. So I just like to see an alternative. So I've been trying to manifest it and envision it, and so you may get an invite from us sometime,
Okay,
Nikki.
that sounds great. And I'm going, listen, I'm gonna hold on to your vision. I love that. I saw, I don't know, Facebook, Instagram, I have no idea, a social work cruise next year. And I looked and I was like, that is the first week of school, right? Like it doesn't fit what my life is as a an adjunct. But I was thinking, I love that a social worker decided we should all go on a cruise together, and this is what we're going to do. So I listen, tell me where, and
Mhm.
I will show up. I think we need those spaces that are outside of the traditional spaces where we can be honest and authentic and empower and support and uplift each other, because the diversity in thought is important, but also because some of the things that we have been taught were taught 50 years ago. And the world has changed and continues to change. And if we hold everything to a hard and fast, right, there is no room for growth. There's no room for opportunity. There's no room for people who have different viewpoints to come into the fold. And so then there's more separation. And so I would love to see more connection and collaboration. Um, I talk to my students about other social work organizations. I get to work with public health students and see what's happening over there. I understand that my path has been different. So I have supervised not just social work, sociology, human relations, public health. I'm talking about in the positions and nursing students, family studies students, psychology students, because again, the social work skills allowed me to be able to work with all of those students from all of those different majors. And then I've supervised multidisciplinary teams. Of course, this is the work that we do in real life. And so I think there is something about the way social workers think that I like, right? Like I know it. When you're talking to a social worker, you know it. My staff that had social work degrees were a little easier to I don't want to say they burned out a little bit less than my other staff, because I didn't have to say like, no, you can't do that thing, because they already had that in the classroom, right? um, but there's also this piece of where do we go when, not just when we're excited and we have great ideas, But where do we go when we need a pick me up? Where do we go when we need a little bit of support and empowerment? And I'm not looking for um, a pity party, but there is something about having people who understand you. And then you're like, oh, I'm not crazy. Okay, cool. Let's go back to work. It's that kind of thing. So I would love to do that in a space that is not very formal and allows people to just be, right? Be human and be social workers, but be human.
Yeah. Social work can be a lonely road sometimes.
Yes.
And sometimes we take care of everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And then we find ourselves not taking care of ourselves and lacking the community that we need. And sometimes stuff's all online.
Yep.
My work is all online. My students' work is online.
Yep.
And so it's needed more than ever. And we need to sometimes stop and take a breath and realize
And
that there's so many of us out there, that need it, where we need each other, and we have to
yes.
have those places set up, because that's the last thing we want, is whether it's a student or a new social worker or an old social worker for that matter, that
Mm-hmm.
is walking around feeling lonely and dejected and
Yes.
disconnected and whatnot. And so we got to figure that out moving forward.
We do, and I think it's coming, it's happening. I appreciate that you have done so much with both podcasts, but and specifically offering your students a different way to social work, right? Like there are different ways, and so I use that language specifically with my students. Is you can social work differently. There are different ways to social work. You can do this thing. Um, and one of the things that has helped me kind of stay grounded um, is coming up with my own social work philosophy, right? We have the code of ethics, everybody knows that. But what is your own internal, personal philosophy? And for me, it starts with, and it's five, and feel free. And so number one is define social work career success on your own terms. That is number one. I'm always going to advocate for that. The second is social workers don't take a vow of poverty. We don't take a vow of poverty. The third is that professional burnout is not a social work rite of passage. So we need to stop normalizing that. And the fourth is that social work skills are high income skills and social work skills are highly transferable is the fifth one. And so every day I'm like checking in, like, where am I on this list? Is the work that I'm doing still keeping me true to this? Am I living this thing that I publicly, right, said and wrote? But also, it was something that was very important to me when I was thinking, like, do I want to do this anymore? Like, I don't really know that I want to do this anymore. And I had gotten to the point of burnout. But the truth is, all of my social work education training and skills is also what got me out of the burnout. So yes, it got me in, but it also got me out,
Yeah.
right? Like I went back to, like, where's my supervision? Where is my support system? What are the things that I can do? So I went back to all of the things that I knew to get me out of that space that I had gotten into because I was so focused on work, work, work. Um, and so, social work can be the problem and the solution. And it's
Hmm.
just what it is.
Yeah. And I tell students some of the best way you can learn social work is self-application. Practice on
Yep.
yourself. You know what I'm
Yep.
saying? And that goes back to, I think, another thing that I preach often is knowing yourself and knowing what you believe. Just like what you said, don't just take the code of ethics like it's something you get, somebody's
Hmm.
going to give it to you and recycle it or something. You have your own values and you should have your own system, and you should think about that, and you should know
Yep.
it, because you can't live it and you can't do it if you don't know it. And then,
Absolutely.
like what you were saying about talking about us and the profession differently, words
Hmm.
and words have power, and the way we say things matter. And so if we always talk about social work as this impoverished job and you should just, you
Hmm.
know bend the knee and take the sacrifice, and there's no money to
Right.
be made in social work, then that's the way
Yep.
that it's going to be. You have to talk
Yep.
about it and look at it differently. And if you don't accept that, and Miss Angela Davis said, I'm no longer accepting the things I cannot change. I'm changing the things I can no longer accept. And so if you don't
Absolutely.
accept it, then change it. It may not be today, it may not be tomorrow, but I promise you that you can make that change in
Yep.
yourself and in the larger scheme of things. So, but we got to start by
Absolutely.
naming it as it is, and not or how we need it to be or want it to be, and
Mhm.
then we'll get there, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely. And we're seeing it, right?
Yeah.
We've said it and now we're seeing it. Social workers making six figures, not doing, therapy, but doing so many other things. There's the corporate social work collective. There's, sports social work. There's financial social work. There's so many things that we didn't have 30 years ago that now is a great time to go into social work and to make it your own, and do social work the way it works for you versus the way it's been taught for everybody else, because we're all individual and unique, and so our career should be the same.
Yeah, absolutely. And well, the conversation gives me hope, Nikki. Every week I talk to somebody and I get more hope, and I feel like this is all gonna like collectivize. It's like separate drops of water, and we're all
Yeah.
being pulled together. And I can't help but think, like I said, that the universe is just aligned for it right now. It hasn't been
I
aligned in the
believe that.
past. It's moving there for us.
I believe that. Yep.
Yeah. Well,
But
I
I am
wanted,
hopeful. I am hopeful. Yep.
yeah, lots of hope to be out there. I wanted
Yep.
to share your website right here, and I'll put all of the links and the ways that you can contact Nikki and her website in the description if you're watching this after the fact.
Yep.
See, there it is.
Yep.
And so there's a link to the website. Let's see, I got something going on in the
Absolutely.
chat. Okay, yeah. Take care, David. I'll see you soon. I'll reach out to you and we'll talk about it. Well, Nikki, we're running to the end of our time. It's been a pleasure. I say this all the time: is that the very, very best conversations on a podcast are the ones that go by quickly, and you have. I feel
Yeah.
like I could talk forever about many of the issues that we talked about. We could go deep,
Yeah.
And so I just want to say thank you for being who you are. Thank you for the work that you're doing. Thank you for taking the time out for me, for my students, and the
Absolutely.
broader social work community that might listen to this.
Yeah.
And I just want to give you the opportunity for any last words or anything at the end you want to talk about.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you. I love this work, and I love social work. So I'm willing to do my part to make sure that the change happens. I am definitely excited about what's next for all of us collectively, because I do think, like you said, the universe is aligned. So I do see and feel the shift happening. And so we all can lean into that shift. I think what I want to say to students again is you get to decide how you social work. Now, that doesn't mean everything is going to be easy. That doesn't mean you don't have to think outside the box and be innovative. That doesn't mean that you won't have to do some extra leg work on your own to kind of figure out what is available. Um, but there are mentors who are out there. There are podcasts, there are books, there are groups, there are people online who absolutely would take some time to, share some wisdom with you. So speak up and advocate for yourself. A lot of times we talk about social workers as advocates, but we don't encourage students to advocate for themselves. So um, I definitely want you to speak up and advocate for yourself and seek reciprocity. Look for connections, experiences, opportunities, work that is reciprocal, that you are receiving as much as you are giving. And I'm always going to be a proponent of self care, right?
Yeah.
And NASW added it to the code of ethics. So self care.
The the very best social worker is a social work that's thriving themselves, not somebody who doesn't have
Absolutely.
any money and bent over and overworked. It's the
Nope.
social worker that's thriving and smiling, just like you, Nikki.
Yep.
That's what I want to see.
Yep,
Um,
absolutely. I am not a better social worker if I am poor and hungry and wondering how I'm going to pay my bill. In fact, I'm a worse social worker.
yeah.
If that is the kind of stress that I am bringing to my work. So I am excited for your students. So congratulations, especially you December graduates. And I am very, very grateful for this opportunity. I love social work and love supporting students. So I'm grateful for this opportunity.
We are lucky to have you in social work, Nikki,
Thank
and
you.
I know this won't be the last time that we're connected. I got really
Yeah,
good vibes about it, and
yes,
we'll be working together in the future. Like we gotta get
absolutely.
together and write something. I got a couple ideas,
Yes.
and I might as well plant the seed right now. When you were talking, I was thinking I've been thinking about this revolutionary social work book, but what about having it a book that's, like we get 10 of us that are doing some different things and we all write a chapter
Mhm.
in it. It would be just such an excellent, people that are doing things different, making their blazing their own paths.
Absolutely.
That would be
I would
beautiful.
love that. And it's a need. It is
Yeah.
a need, right? We want to fill the gap. It is a need. So I'm in. I am in.
Yeah. Yeah. And I wanted to shout out Joey in the chat. Joey and I've been kind of running around the same bush, connecting with each other a little bit. Joey,
Okay.
thanks for the work that you do, and thanks for financial social work. And let's connect maybe in the spring to do a podcast together on here.
Excellent.
So much respect to you and what you got going, Joey.
Yeah.
And yeah, we're out of time. I want to thank everybody in the chat, everybody that watches this later. I appreciate you. The podcasts are always better when we have you. I realize it's Halloween and all that, so people are probably
Happy
busy out there.
Halloween.
Yeah, happy Halloween. My kids will be dressing me up in a little bit later.
Okay.
So, all right, Nikki. Well, it's been a pleasure. Like I
Thank
said,
you.
I love the work that you do. I love the positive vibes that you put out there into the world, and
Thank
you're
you.
making it a better place. So,
Thank
again,
you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
yeah, thanks, and have a great day and happy Halloween.
Thank you.
Okay, bye bye.